Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome back to Googleization Nation. Beginning of middle of January already. Hard to believe. Somebody asked me the other day, "How was my holiday?" And it's like, "What holiday?" It's like, like when was that? It just moved pretty quickly. Joining me today, you can see, is Jeanne Meister. So, hey, welcome, Jeanne. We're going to talk about the future workplace.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here, Ira.
Yeah, no, and we've been trying to do this for a couple months anyway. I
Right.
know we've kind of met online a few months ago. I think you did a conference for Enrique Rubio, Hacking HR.
I
Was that
did.
right?
I
Yeah.
did. Absolutely. We
Yeah.
had a session on preparing for the future of work.
Yeah, and we connected there, and you were gracious enough we connected, and you were gracious enough to say, "Yeah, I'd love to be on this." And just took a little bit and get through the holidays,
Right.
but really exciting times. I didn't even have a chance to do it. It's been a crazy morning, as it seems to be our everyday life. But even this morning, there was I just before we went online, I saw about LinkedIn. There was a post about how AI makes bad medicine worse, and which went against the other thing I read yesterday, or maybe over the weekend, that said how AI is so much better than oncologists at predicting and controlling cancer. So we're getting these contradictory information. So that's what we're going to be talking about. But we're going to talk about HR. And the person who posted that was from HR, and they posted it saying that assessments themselves would be, or assessments based on AI, going to be better predictors of human performance, of our personal development, of our path. And if it's bad for medicine, then it must be bad for HR. So, so which is sort of a contradiction between what you found out in your survey, which we'll get to. But I just want to kind of go through a couple housekeeping things here. We are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. If you have any questions, comments, please post them there. I'm going to try to monitor it. If I'm looking away at screens, I'm not checking my email and text and doing things. I'm not ignoring Eugene, and I'm not ignoring everybody who's listening here, because the system doesn't show the comments within that. But we are live, and if you have any questions or comments, please post them. We'll try to get to them on there and answer your questions. But I'm sure you and I are going to have a ton to talk about. I know you've got a course. I've got a new course, Recruiting in the Age of Googleization, Learning Hub. It's live, so if you go up to my website, and I'll post this here later, successperformancesolutions.com, just click on the first link. You see about candidate experience, and we'll talk about everything that you need to do to improve your candidate experience. And we definitely want to talk about that, how AI might help, not marketing it. Indirectly in marketing it, but how AI is going to impact talent acquisition, but also all aspects of HR, from recruiting people to retaining people to onboarding people to engaging them. Again, so many things to talk about. And I know you have a new course, AI for HR. And if I can get this to work here, I'm going to put your banner up of how they can see that. There it goes. Go. So it should be scrolling across the bottom.
Yeah.
Hopefully I didn't get any typos or anything.
Right.
But as soon as you go there, you'll see that. So we'll keep that up for a while, then we'll switch up a few things. But let's talk about how are you using AI for HR. So again, if you out there, anybody listening has any questions, if you have any success stories, any obviously failures, disruptions, let us know. We'll be happy to try to answer that. So, Jeanne, you've been, future workplace. By the way, we dressed in theme here. We got the right background, right colors. You matched my logo, and also the corporate name. Very few people use this or know this. I don't do it. My corporate name is Poised for the Future Company.
Oh,
So yeah, and it's sort of like when I did it, it was like we branded it as a success performance solution, but the corporate name happens to be Poised for the Future. So it fits in lines of everything that we're talking about here. So how can companies, what you found? You had a great survey with Oracle, 8,300 plus people that you surveyed. Really want to dig into some of the results that you found here. But give a little background. What was the premise of that? How did you get there?
yeah, absolutely. Well, first, yes, thank you very much. It is the largest survey of HR professionals, hiring managers, and workers on the topic of HR. 8,300 across 10 countries. And the premise was going all the way back to 2018. Future Workplace, just to introduce the company, is an HR advisory and research firm. We work with heads of HR, heads of learning, and heads of talent on what's next for them in preparing themselves, their organizations, their teams for the future workforce and workplace. We survey them regularly, and they said actually understanding artificial intelligence and how to use it across the employee lifecycle was the number one issue they were going to face as they moved into 2020. And so we've done a couple of things. We did this survey, which I'll talk to you about at length, and then we designed a 5-week online course using AI, number 4 HR, granting 8 SHRM and HCI credits, and really featuring, in addition to myself, 12 HR practitioners who have firsthand knowledge of how they're using AI for HR. So the survey found actually addressed first of all, some of the point you made in the opening, Ira. There's a lot of confusion in the marketplace, right? And companies see not only the headlines of how using AI is you can augment human intelligence, you can increase productivity, and you can enhance the candidate and employee experience. On the other hand, there are certainly articles out there that question the use of AI, and I'm a proponent in looking at the ethics of AI. Mm-hmm. I think that's the number one big issue facing us in 2020. If we're using AI, and our survey found that 15% of our over 8,000 organizations are currently deploying AI, and another 30% have pilots and are assessing how AI can be used in their organization. So right off the bat, that's almost 50% of organizations that are either actively deploying it or assessing deployment. As we head into 2020, we are really experiencing a lot of emerging laws on the ethical and responsible use of AI. One law that goes into effect in January of 2020 is called the California Bot Transparency Law, which says that if you are an organization using a bot in any way to communicate with a candidate or employee, you have to disclose it's not a human interaction. And so I think this puts the spotlight on HR leaders that want to pilot AI in their organizations, but at the same time need to be aware of emerging laws and issues regarding the ethics and responsible use of AI in the workplace. So that's why we've created this course for 5 weeks to profile these 12 practitioners who are dealing with this and sharing their business results.
Well, we talked about a couple things. Starting out with, wow, we dressed in, we took a code. Not only do we have, again, similar interests, similar focus, Poised for the Future workplace, but my master's is in leadership and ethics. So it's always been a passion of mine. And again, looking at both sides, looking at the positives and negatives. And, one of the themes that keeps coming up across there, I work with a number of futurists like you do as well, is that just because we can do it, should we do it?
Yeah.
That's been a theme. One of my presentations is about keeping the H in HR, keeping the human in HR. And part of that is we can do a whole lot. And there are a lot of benefits to utilizing HR or to using AI in business and, and our focus, which is HR. But there's certainly a lot of challenges with that. And so that takes me to one of the questions here.
Yeah.
You said, and it's sort of, and I don't want to bring politics into this at all, but I want to use the similarity. 53% of people in the survey were optimistic and excited about having robot coworkers. Okay, and then you just mentioned about 50% of the people, 50% were going toward that. That leaves the other half, and I guess is the glass half full or half empty. If we parallel to this to where our country is on a political divide, we always get that. We get that like 53% are in favor, but 44% are opposed, and that's a huge problem. And when I look at this in HR, is that the people that you polled, more than half were optimistic. What was it? I'm gonna display this too.
64%. Yeah. I think
64% trust a robot more than their manager. Significant. The challenge is maybe I live or work with in a different environment, because the people that I hear, including family members, but also coworkers, including I did 14 or 15 SHRM conferences last year. The concerns I get are not following into this optimistic crowd about AI. It's almost like and again, it's not just an opinion, but the people that this 40% or 35% or whatever it is that are opposing this are literally just not getting on board.
Yeah, so I think the issue here is they don't understand, and they haven't been communicated by their organization how AI is going to be used to actually enhance and augment their jobs. Interestingly, I gave those statistics at a live stream event in November, and I happened to have in the audience the head of HR at a company and her number one direct report. And we had a live poll, and we said, would you trust a bot more than your manager? And the person that reported to the head of HR said yes. And the head of HR started laughing and said, I think she's right for these routine questions regarding, PTO or, any kind of routine question. A bot is always available and I'm not. So I think when you start to peel the onion a little bit on, well, what exactly would a bot actually improve in the workplace? It starts to make sense, and you can say, well, yeah, I can get my answers resolved immediately. I think the other really interesting finding, and a case study that's going to be featured in our next course starting January 20th, using AI for HR, is how bots are used to report sexual misconduct in the workplace and harassment and bullying in the workplace. And in this case, this is a real enhancement, because the individual that's impacted is very emotional and may not want to disclose an entire situation to a human, and feels more comfortable, especially with the opportunity to report this in an anonymous way for the organization to then look into it. One of our case studies that we have in the course have found these incidences being reported, almost double, and the quality of the reports are much more thorough. So when you you really have to think of, well, what is it for? There are clearly areas where you need your manager, obviously, for coaching, for one-on-ones to share the vision and values of where your organization and where your team is going. But for a lot of the issues that you are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, yes, it turns out that more than 60% of people, when they start thinking about it, and say, well, you know what, it makes sense. I can hopefully resolve my situation faster so I can go back to my job and be productive on my job faster.
So going back, there's a whole lot of stuff you said there.
Yeah.
I was taking some notes just to make sure I didn't forget them. Because definitely we want to talk about some of the ethical things. I got a great question, but let's go back to what you talked about with bots. And going back to my original proposition is that there's 40 to 50% of the people who say, no, we're not so bought into this. And are they pushing back? It's like, I don't trust my phone. I don't want Alexa and Google and Siri at my home because it's going to invade my privacy. But they just had a record year. I mean, more and more people.
Right.
We have, my wife for the holidays got me this, like a whole bunch of Alexa attachments. And I was like, I'm not going to use these. And all of a sudden, like everything's synced. We're coordinating this. And frankly, for the convenience and for maybe the fun and the experience, and I'm certainly more risk taker on that regard. But yeah, I know I'm giving up some privacy. But there's a lot of people who say, oh, I don't trust the bot or I don't trust artificial intelligence. And yet they're on their phone all the time. They're talking, they're giving up all this information. So I think there's a huge degree of naivety across this. And that's what I think what you're doing, more specifically to AI, to HR. But I think there's a whole lot of education that needs to be done to the public of where this fits.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point you mentioned. I think certainly the number one barrier here on a personal level is fear and mistrust of data, how the organization is going to use the data. One of the interesting statistics in that survey was 80% of the respondents to the survey said, actually, an organization should tell me if they're using the data first and how long they're going to store the data. So actually, Ira, all of this gets back to communication. Communicating what you're going to do and how you're going to use AI in the organization at the organizational level, the team level, and the individual level, because you've got to really deal with these key emotional issues around fear and mistrust. So people go along with it and see there are a lot of benefits. The other interesting barriers in the work in using AI and deploying it was, just not an understanding among leaders, right? There are pockets in the organization that get it, but overall leaders are still sort of, show me the benefits, show me the ROI and how this is going to impact and improve productivity and deliver real business results, because after all, there is a cost to this, right?
Oh, absolutely. And so again, and we've had a lot of people, a lot of my discussions recently. Tomorrow we're talking. I'm talking with Kevin Grossman and Jerry Crispin. Back Canada experience is tied into this as well. And then on Wednesday, actually on my podcast, I'm talking with Charlene Lee, who wrote the Disruption Mindset. I don't know if you know Charlene.
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah. So, and she's got, fantastic program, and again, everybody ties into this whole conversation. But one of the things that tends to be happening is that when you talk about the leaders, not understanding this, is that there still seems to be this approach of, well, we're going to invest in another piece of technology. We're going to invest in another, HIRS or an ATS, or we're really going to focus this year on employee experience, which is the kind of the theme. And the technology is going to solve the problem. And the technology never solves the problem.
Never, right?
And why would you why would companies, and this may just be a rhetorical question,
Yeah.
why would companies purchase invest in an expensive piece of HR technology and then not utilize the data that they're collecting behind it, which is what AI is. I mean, AI is just taking all this data. It's purely big data on steroids. It's taking all the data and figuring out how to manage it better. So it's like, okay, we need a better system to collect more data faster, but we're not sure if we really want to use that.
Well, as we go through the course, one of the deliverables for learners is to come up with an action plan for how you think you're proposing your organization uses AI. And the very first step is threefold, right? It's called recognizing the urgency. And to do that, you have to identify what's the business problem that you're solving with AI. Specifically, what is that problem in terms of speed to hire, in terms of giving employees greater opportunities for career growth, such as an internal talent mobility platform. Personalizing the learning experience. What's the problem you're going to solve? What's the data behind the current state, which looks at where you are right now in solving that problem? And very importantly, who are your stakeholders that are going to go along with you on this journey to use AI to solve this problem? And we believe that this is not an HR initiative. It is very much a team sport with HRIS, IT, marketing, communications, of course, finance. So legal, who are the key players and how can you together identify the problem and create the shared vision? And that's really the only way you're going to address the barrier of nobody really understands why we're doing it and what we're going to get out of it.
I was laughing because, again, in prepping for Charlene's podcast on Wednesday, too, her new book, she has a section, she has the 5 types of followers.
Yeah.
In there. And I don't know if you've seen that. But one was, are they effective followers? Are they yes people? Are they alienated followers? Are they sheep? Or the kind of the middle, of the hub is, are they the survivors? So, again, we're tune in on Wednesday on Geek Skeezers and Googleization. We'll be talking a lot more about that. But it's funny. I mean, it's really, but it's an old principle. I mean, whatever we call that, it was who are the internal advocates? Who's that one person who's going to be it used to be champion of change. Who is that champion that can carry the message and be that?
Yes.
And, now I guess that's an old title in a disruptive world. So now we need new titles. And going from there. So fascinating. Hey, I want to go back to something that you mentioned. You talked about identifying, helping to be able to create a better, transparent, effective process for sexual harassment.
Yeah.
For any type of harassment, really, within the workplace.
Exactly.
But that to me it also opens up the can of worms that we were talking about with the ethical solutions. So on the one sense of being able to automate that process, that I can report it, it goes through the channels, it's confidential, but it could be more accurate, it could be faster, but now you get into, it could evaluate the authenticity, how genuine is that, or is somebody just making a complaint? It also gets into the point of which gets into fear. The next point, and I assume this is going to be addressed in your courses. So you identify a pattern, and all of a sudden, innocent people are being identified as a potential risk for sexual harassment within the database.
Yeah. So I think I want to answer that question on this use application as well as the application using a bot for talent acquisition. In both of these situations and many others, the bot, the AI solution, never ever makes the final call. right? And so, especially in both cases, let's just take talent acquisition first. You can use a bot, as Hilton has done since 2015, actually, to on their career website to apply for a job, and you seamlessly go through the application and see quickly what job is appropriate for you in which location. But at no point does the bot ever make obviously the final call. It's like an obvious statement, but we have to keep reminding ourselves that this is only a way to seamlessly collect the information so that the next step, there's what's called the human in the loop. The human comes in and then, either in talent acquisition or in this case with reporting whatever type of harassment there is in the workplace, makes the call. But in both cases, they're actually quite similar, right? In that you can seamlessly report everything you need to. And now you hit that send button and you know that there is a person at the other end that's going to take this and do something with it. Just like this deals with the black hole that I'm sure you're familiar with from recruiting, right?
Talk about it every day. It isn't getting any better. Ghosting. Yep.
For both talent acquisition and reporting. The other really interesting use case that we're going to see a lot more in 2020 is using AI platforms for internal talent mobility. Again, let's say I'm in a company, I have a great job, but I don't think it's the job I really want next. Well, I can go and talk to my HR person, or I can send an email, or I can connect with whomever, but that can take weeks, right? One of the case studies in our course, by using an AI-powered platform and putting your profile together and identifying your passions, your credentials, and what you want for yourself next, you can get an answer and with some possibilities within minutes as opposed to weeks. So it's really moving, whatever your issue is, faster so that you can get it resolved and get back to doing, what you love doing in the workplace.
Yeah. So you'll get a kick out of this. I saw this morning and I downloaded it. I didn't get to put it anywhere, but so I'm going to show it here. It's from Kronos. How long do we have to stay in the talent pool before a position opens up? So people built these talent pools, right? And what you're saying is here's where the AI is. That question goes away. We identify, here's what my strengths, here's what I have to do, here's where an opportunity lies, be able to personalize, not only be able to identify, it's not only for diagnostic, but basically to be able to deliver a learning solution, a path, micro-learning. Hey, this is what I need now. I have an opportunity today to do something. And it's like, oh, I've got to submit it. And it's like 3 months, and will they approve it? And oh, the HR director is out of the office today. I don't get to do it. Lost opportunity.
Absolutely. And you know why that's so important? Because now the number one reason why people leave an organization is no longer their manager. It's their perception of a lack of career growth across generations. People feel stuck, right? Mm-hmm. It's a flatter organization, and organizations are moving from a promotion-based culture to a career growth culture. And what that says is you need a technology solution to provide greater opportunities to individuals so they can really see what's the path for them. And as you said, Ira, how do I get there? What are the courses? Now I'm motivated to take some learning courses because I see how it all makes sense for me.
Right. So it's a matter of getting, you and I agree on this, and I think a lot of other people that are listening to today as well, is that we need to get to the solution faster so we can implement it. And right now we spend so much time trying to figure out, well, let's talk about, identifying the problem, coming up with alternatives, picking the solution, and then it goes away. And sometimes by that point, the solution, it's not even a problem, or the problem's so much bigger that the solution you came up with isn't effective. So, but let me go back to I still want to go back to that sexual harassment.
Yeah.
Is that you and I know, and from an ethical perspective, is being able to use it ethically. But there's still that fear out there of why wouldn't someone, because now you get into the same thing we get into, and I'll use my parallel in the assessment business. People say, well, what happens if you do an assessment and you know this person, there's a risk for failure, or you know this person, we don't measure the psychological aspects of it, but somebody is low on self-control and they're high on assertiveness. So these are common things. So they're way out there. They got a big mouth. They say what's on their mind. They have a low need to be liked. They're low on transparency, and they have a short fuse. Okay, so oh my goodness, we don't need another one of those. That's just from a common off-the-shelf personality assessment. Now we've got the data. We've got 1 million points pointing to this person that there's a 69% likelihood that this person's going to lose their temper and possibly bully or harass somebody. I mean, the discussion, there's no way to absolutely prevent that, but the benefits are so much greater. You and I know that. The benefits are so much better.
Yeah.
But what companies aren't doing is they keep, again, I'm a huge advocate. You're a huge advocate using HR technology, but they keep purchasing HR technology and not asking these questions. It's what happens. I heard this maybe 2 years ago in one of the people analytics conferences. And they said, the question isn't that, I forget the company, it might have been Walmart or Deloitte or somebody, that they knew with like 79% accuracy when a particular manager, not a particular, but when a type of a role of a manager would be ready to accept a job offer or a call from a recruiter. And it turned out, like if they're between 30 and 38 years old and they got a 4-year degree, they've been on the job for 3.5 years, they got 2 kids and they commute 14 miles.
Right.
They knew all this data. And you go, here was the problem that they couldn't figure out. They could implement a plan, but who do they tell? If they tell the manager that this person's at risk at 32 months at leaving, does the manager now favor that individual? Or do they basically say they're going to leave and I'm going to focus on somebody else?
So that's a great question. And I think a number of organizations are answering it in the following way. It's called predictive or proactive retention, right? I now know, based on a lot of variables about your compensation, the sentiment of you and your engagement of both yourself and your manager, your compensation, your location, how long you've been in the role. I know, or I've identified you know what, you're at risk of leaving the organization. What is really important, if you have that information, is to also share with the manager, and here's the playbook to retain that individual in the organization through any number of ways: coaching, mentoring, access to additional learning and development. You can't just give half of the information, right? You have to paint the whole picture so that the manager then really can take the best action he or she can for themselves and for the team. So it's really marrying the data with, sort of a qualitative playbook on what you can, here are some possibilities that the manager can do. But again, it goes back to the decisions are made by the humans. The algorithm that just puts you in the best possible position with all the data to make the call, right, that you're going to make. And we have a really interesting Harvard Business School case in the course called Who Do You Hire? Who do you trust, your gut or an algorithm in hiring someone? And the bottom line, after you read, the 8 pages, is at the end of the day, it's a human, but you now know through the algorithm or the AI solution a lot more data than you had, say, 5 or 10 years ago.
Absolutely. So and again, we agree, but as I always say, I always use this example. In my family, I was 5'9", and everybody else was 5'4" and 5'3", so I was always a tall person.
Right.
And if I only surrounded myself by people who were 5'3", 5'4", 5'5", I'd be a tall person. The problem is I have friends that are 6'4", 6'5", 6'2", and therefore I'm not, I'm looking at their belly button. And you have to put yourself out there. So part of it is I think companies got to be careful. It's not like, hey, we went to this meeting. I just ran into this situation the other day on a different example, but it was about, we went to this meeting and I said, but everybody, and I know who the meeting was. Everybody in that meeting is a small, medium-sized business in the same region. I know there's a lot of people who don't participate in your group because they don't agree with everything you do, but you're taking the advice and you haven't gone outside. You haven't looked at what are the other consequences? What's the downstream effect?
Right.
And when you were talking about the managers, AI requires a whole different level of management training.
That is the best takeaway. It requires a different type of manager, and we focus on if you automate routine tasks for the individuals, then you have to you need to upskill the individuals so that they are able to provide a more strategic role to the organization. But on the other side, the managers and the leaders, right, also need to be upskilled so that they can do a better job leading with all this information at their fingertips now.
Right. So again, I'm going back to that example I gave you. I can imagine that the manager gets a monthly report and it says, you have what your production numbers are, you have what the reviews, what your performance rating is, and it has, a column at the end that talks about at risk at leaving in 6 months. And so does the person like panic and jump, and that's like, oh, I was going to ask him to do something, or I was thinking of maybe I should give him a little bit more of a raise, which may be the correct response, but it's just winging it. I mean, it's how do they deliver a better solution? How do they get more engagement? What's that conversation sound like?
Yes.
And again, be honest with you, I mean, and again, it's in your course. At least it sounds like it is. I looked at the curriculum at the surface, but I haven't seen anywhere that's an offering, that anybody's even talking about how do we train managers. They talk it to better understand AI, and sometimes it's simpler. How do we get managers to accept AI? But not understanding is, hey, as soon as they say yes, okay, we'll go along with it, it's changed their job forever.
It's changed their job, and they have to make time for training themselves to have a different role in their organization and in leading their teams. Right. And so we have to focus on the impact of AI, both on the individual worker and on the leader, because it taps into a deeper set of uniquely human skills for the leader, right? And also more strategic skills for the leader. And again, organizations need to marry the data with the playbook for the leader on how to interpret the data and what are some possible courses of action for individuals in this use case that may be at risk of leaving the organization.
There are so many trains of thought I got going through my head at the moment, and I know you and I can probably do this for hours and hours. But we're about at 40 minutes, and I usually try to keep these. I told you before, and I tell every one of my guests, my goal was 30 minutes max. I have yet to accomplish that, but I have kept it under 45 because I know that because people got busy schedules. There were two questions, though. One and specific you can answer. One was, is the podcast going to be available for download? It won't be available for download, but it will be available on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook as soon as we're done here. They can do that. And the other one was, how many of the 64% respondents, we were talking about the robots, do you know that they had previous experience working with a robot at least 6 months? So basically, the people that said that they favored that they thought that a robot could give a better answer than a manager, how many of them had experience using a robot?
Yeah,
You know?
it was totally random. We did not qualify people for that specific question that they had to have experience. It was what do you think? Would a robot, in what ways, do you think a robot would be better and working on certain things, resolving certain issues than a manager? So the answer is we didn't screen for that. And we also know in the HR role that only 15% of organizations are deploying AI for HR. So it's still a very small percentage. So whether they had experience or not was only a handful would have, right? But I think overall, as we have to, as HR leaders, there's a couple things we have to take away from this. Number one, AI isn't the future, it's here today, right? We have 50% of organizations using it, another 30% plans are in place to use it. Number two, it's not an HR initiative, it's a business initiative because it changes the way work gets done for both the individual and the manager/leader. And number three, we have to underscore the importance of communication. What is AI? How is AI used for marketing and with our customers and to improve the customer experience? And then how do we translate that to helping AI improve the candidate and employee experience, right? We have to communicate to both our individual employees and to our leaders that it's here and it's up to us to share the business benefits and to be aware and deal with the ethical and responsible use cases of AI in the workplace.
And within your 5-week course, I think it's 5 weeks, right?
It is 5 weeks online.
Within 5 weeks, everybody will have all this problem solved, all straightened out, right?
Well, register today. It starts next Monday.
Yeah. So again, Jeanne, I appreciate you being here. If you want more information about Jeanne or Workplace and the course, go to futureworkplace.com. It's right at the top of the page. I've had a whole bunch of people asking about when we can get where they can get the link. As soon as we're done, I don't have it now. It's not available until we're off the air. So I will post that on my feed. So anybody who's connected with me on here, LinkedIn or Facebook, we'll get that. Or if you want, again, this and future updates, I post everything we've done for the last week or prior weeks in it. I do it as a newsletter or email or wherever. Join GoogleizationNation.com. Actually, if you go to join.GoogleizationNation, you'll get two things. One is I'm giving away 1,000 copies of my new book, which will be out February 4th. It's a second edition of Recruiting in the Age of Googlization. But if you just go to Googleization Nation, you will basically get, you'll go on to this subscription. You'll basically get a subscription. It's free, and I send out all the live streams, all the podcasts, all the articles, the notices. I'm going to put your survey up there to make that available for people, and we'll go from there. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Ira. It was
fun.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Any closing words, comments? Anything I missed?
No, I think you did a great job. I hope to see everyone on online and using AI for HR starting January 20th, and that's our website, using4hr.com.
Yeah. One way or other, everybody will be using AI for HR.
Exactly.
So get prepared. Yep. Hey, thanks very much. Again, we'll see you tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I've got Kevin Grossman. We're going to be talking about the results from the candidate board. We talk about why we need AI. Last year, despite everything you and I just talked about, Jeanne, everything we talked about, candidate resentment went up 40% in 2019.
Wow.
I mean, how is that possible with all this
Yeah.
stuff? So again, we're going to be talking with Kevin and Jerry Crispin about that. Which also, he had a really interesting question this year. He had added to that survey, and it was about salary. And we get into using AI to predict salary and compensation and what's the best model and benefits. So many good things that we can possibly add into that. So make sure you're here. And then Wednesday, Geek Skeezers Googlization is with Charlene Lee, the Disruption Mindset. So busy couple days. A lot of learning to be done over the next few days. But thanks, Jeanne. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to everyone. The 2020 workplace is here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.